That all known websites associated with the hacking group REvil are in fact down this morning. April. They're a Russian-speaking gang, probably operating out of a former Soviet state.
That we're tired of actors hacking our hospitals, hacking our critical infrastructure.
President, will you retaliate against Russia for this latest ransomware attack?
We're looking closely at that issue.
July 2021. Across 17 countries, 1,500 businesses woke up to the same message glowing on their screens. Your files are encrypted. Factories went silent. Supermarkets closed their doors. Pharmacies lost access to patient records. For many victims, the attack arrived quietly, discovered only after systems had already been locked. This was not just another cyber attack. It was the work of REvil, the most dangerous ransomware organization in the world at the time. It was a criminal enterprise powerful enough to disrupt global supply chains and to force a direct phone call between the presidents of the United States and Russia. This is the story of how REvil rose, how they built an invisible empire, and how it finally collapsed. 2 years earlier, in May 2019, the ransomware gang GandCrab announced its retirement. They claimed nearly $2 billion in ransom payments and vanished from the internet. But in the cybercriminal underworld, retirement does not mean disappearance. It means a rebranding. Within weeks, a new ransomware strain appeared. It was called Sodinokibi. Security researchers quickly noticed familiar patterns. The code shared striking similarities with GandCrab. The infrastructure felt recycled. Even the malware avoided specific keyboard layouts: Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian. It reflected an unspoken rule in Eastern European cybercrime circles: don't attack your own backyard. Soon, Sodinokibi adopted a new name, REvil, a reference to the video game Resident Evil. But this was not just another ransomware gang. REvil was building something unprecedented. They introduced a business model known as Ransomware-as-a-Service. Core developers wrote and maintained the malware, the payment systems, and the leak sites. Affiliates, independent hackers scattered around the world, carried out the intrusions. The profits were split. Affiliates kept most of the ransom. REvil took a cut from every successful attack. By 2020, REvil had become the most prolific ransomware operation on Earth, earning an estimated $100 million a year. Their most dangerous innovation was double extortion. Victims were not simply locked out of their systems. REvil spent weeks, sometimes months, quietly inside networks first, stealing financial records, employee data, and proprietary information. Only then did the encryption begin. Pay the ransom, or watch your data published for the world to see. REvil had perfected digital extortion at scale, but their ambitions were still growing. They were about to target something far bigger than individual companies. They were about to target the supply chain itself. In May 2021, over Memorial Day weekend, REvil made its move. Their target was JBS, the world's largest meat processing company, responsible for roughly 1/5 of beef and pork production in the United States. REvil had already been inside JBS's systems for months. They had stolen vast amounts of data. On June 1st, they activated the ransomware. 13 meat processing plants across the United States, Canada, and Australia shut down almost simultaneously. Production halted, meat supplies tightened, prices climbed. Food infrastructure was now being held hostage by cybercriminals. The FBI confirmed REvil was responsible.
Nasty cyber attack forced the shutdown yesterday of several JBS facilities in North America and also Australia. 13 plants in the United States had to shut down. JBS won't say if it paid any ransom to clear up its hacked computer system. JBS has dozens of brands in the U.S., including Clear River Farms, 1855, and Pilgrims. CBS.
Oh, there's no question that this is cyber warfare. If there is a crack and they really want to, they'll find it. What we have to do is we have to plug every single hole, and all they have to find is one. We can fight this. This isn't a dark hole that we can't get out of. We're starting to get those wake-up calls, so I think we can dig out of this pretty quickly. We're good at this. We're better than the bad guys.
JBS faced an impossible choice: remain offline for weeks and risk severe disruption, or pay the ransom. On June 9th, the company paid $11 million in Bitcoin to regain control of its systems. REvil collected the money and moved on. 1 month later, they escalated again. This time, they targeted Kaseya, a company that provided remote IT management software to managed service providers around the world. Those providers, in turn, managed thousands of small businesses, including accounting firms, dental offices, restaurants, and schools. REvil understood the leverage. Rather than attacking thousands of companies individually, they attacked the software that controlled them all. On July 2, 2021, REvil exploited a vulnerability in Kaseya's system, bypassing authentication and hijacking the company's own update mechanism. Malicious software was pushed directly to customers. Within hours, more than 1,500 businesses across 17 countries were encrypted.
On July 2nd, the multinational information software company Kaseya and its customers were attacked by one of the most prolific strains of ransomware, known as REvil or Sodinokibi. To date, REvil ransomware has been deployed on approximately 175,000 computers worldwide, with at least $200 million paid in ransom. As a result of the Kaseya attack, businesses that relied on Kaseya services across the United States and around the world were impacted.
In Sweden, hundreds of supermarkets closed. Pharmacies lost access to prescription systems. Kindergartens and local governments went offline. REvil demanded $70 million in Bitcoin for a universal decryption key, the largest ransom demand in history. The attack could no longer be ignored. Days later, the President of the United States confirmed he had spoken directly with the President of Russia, warning that ransomware attacks on critical infrastructure would trigger a response. For the first time, a ransomware gang had become a geopolitical problem.
President Biden says he plans to raise the issue with Vladimir Putin when he meets with the Russian president in Geneva in 2 weeks.
Mr. President, will you retaliate against Russia for this latest ransomware attack?
We're looking closely at that issue.
Do you think Putin is testing you?
On July 13, 2021, 11 days after the Kaseya attack, REvil disappeared. Their websites went dark. Payment portals vanished. Communication channels fell silent. The most audacious ransomware group in the world had evaporated overnight. Victims were left in limbo until later that month, when Kaseya announced it had obtained a universal decryption key from a trusted third party. Behind the scenes, investigators would later reveal that law enforcement had quietly obtained REvil's master decryption key weeks earlier, but delayed its use for operational reasons. The real collapse was happening from within. Researchers soon discovered that REvil's developers had secretly built a back door into their own ransomware. This allowed them to bypass affiliates during negotiations and collect ransom payments directly. When affiliates learned they had been cheated, trust collapsed and the criminal franchise imploded. REvil attempted to resurface in September 2021, but the comeback was short-lived. In October, a coordinated international operation dismantled REvil's remaining infrastructure. Servers were seized, dark websites were taken offline, law enforcement wanted more than servers. They wanted people. Later that year, a 22-year-old Ukrainian hacker named Yaroslav Vasinski was arrested while attempting to cross the Polish border. Investigators tied him to thousands of ransomware attacks, including the Kaseya breach.
Justice Department indicted Yaroslav Vasinski, also known by the online moniker Robotnik, charges him with conspiring to commit intentional damage to protected computers and to extort in relation to that damage, causing 2 months after the indictment, on October 8th, Vasinski crossed the border from Ukraine into Poland. Polish authorities arrested him pursuant to provisional arrest warrant. We have now requested that he be extradited from Poland to the United States pursuant to the extradition treaty between our countries.
In January 2022, Russian authorities announced the arrest of multiple REvil members. It was an unprecedented move. For years, ransomware groups operating in Russia had been largely untouchable. The timing was notable. The arrests occurred during a brief window of cooperation between Russia and the West, just weeks before the invasion of Ukraine. Vasinski was eventually extradited to the United States. In May 2024, he was sentenced to 13 years and 7 months in prison, along with millions of dollars in restitution. He was 24 years old. REvil operated for less than 3 years. In that time, they reshaped cybercrime. They demonstrated that the supply chain is the modern battlefield. Compromising one company with access to many can be exponentially more damaging than attacking victims individually. They normalize double extortion. Even organizations with perfect backups could still be forced to pay, facing the threat of stolen data being leaked to the public. They industrialized ransomware. You no longer needed to be a skilled programmer. You only needed access, tools, and someone else's malware. They proved that attribution is possible, but slow and incomplete. It took years of investigation, international cooperation, cyber operations, and diplomatic pressure to dismantle REvil. Even then, many participants remain at large. New ransomware groups quickly adopted REvil's playbook. Supply chain attacks, double extortion, and ransomware-as-a-service are now standard practice. REvil did not invent ransomware. They perfected it. The story of REvil is ultimately a story about power in the digital age. A relatively small group of criminals, operating from apartments and basements, managed to disrupt global food supplies, shut down thousands of businesses, and force conversations between nuclear powers. They exploited a world built on software that was never designed with security as its first priority. An interconnected economy held together by trust relationships that could be abused, and human systems that could not simply be patched. REvil found the cracks in that foundation and pried them open. Their empire did not fall because the system suddenly became secure. It fell because they grew greedy, betrayed their partners, and lost the trust their operation depended on. The invisible empire has collapsed, but the architecture that allowed it to rise remains. Somewhere, someone is studying what REvil did right, learning from what they did wrong, and building the next generation of ransomware. The question is not whether it will happen again. The question is when, and whether we will be ready